Welcome. I hope you are having a wonderful night. Tonight, I will be telling some terrifyingly scary stories. Make sure to leave your feedback on the comments so I can make this the best experience for you. And if you have any stories you would like me to tell, you can send them through the link in the description. I hope you are warm and ready. Let's begin. This story happened recently, and for some context, me and my friends are teens that like to explore and do stupid stuff like normal teenagers do. We found this tunnel that was a drain under a busy road. We had to crouch and sit on our skateboards to explore it since the height of the tunnel was short. As we were going deeper into the tunnel, it gets pitch black, and the flashlights from our phones can only reach about 5 feet in front of us. So we were blind to what we could come across until we were very close to it. In the tunnel, I remember the wall was painted in all red and had sheets of metal with white handprints connected to clothespins. We decided to keep going until we reached what we thought was a dead end. It was not. On the left, there was a more square tunnel compared to the rectangle shape we were in. In the distance of the connected tunnel, there was a bright light coming from the outside, shining from above onto a red shopping cart with belongings in it. We slowly inched towards the light, where the shopping cart was. The light turned out to be a big hole in the ground that we could crawl out of if we needed an escape. As we were about to pass the shopping cart, my friend who was in the lead was too afraid to go forward anymore. It was pitch black 5 feet from where we were. I decided to take the lead and keep going. I stepped past the shopping cart and stopped. I don't know what it was, but I was afraid. I had a gut feeling something was back there. I slowly moved back. I stopped. I swear, I could have saw something move from the deep dark of the tunnel. Before I could put everything together, a loud echo of someone pounding an object on the walls of the tunnel struck me back, causing everybody to freak out and crawl out of the escape hole. Once we got out, a homeless man ran to us asking us what we were doing in there. We told him we were just exploring. He explained to us that there is a man that lives underground in that tunnel, and he would have killed us if we went further. The man was apparently crazy and threw a rock at the poor guy's head before. Luckily, nobody was hurt, but even though that was scary and dangerous, it was fun, and I'm glad I experienced it. This happened to me about 11 years ago when walking home from a friend's house at night. I'll just get straight into it. I used to live in a rural part of the UK and have lived in rural areas most of my life, so I was used to long walks, occasionally at night, especially before I could drive. They never bothered me too much. I'd get creeped out occasionally, but this one night was the most terrifying experience I ever had. There was this one friend who used to live roughly 3 miles away from my house. He had cool parents and my other friends, and I would often go over his house and play video games and hang out. Occasionally, this meant walking home at night if I stayed late. There were 2 ways back from his house. The roadway, which was about 5 miles long and took about 30 to 45 minutes. The roads were very quiet and eerie sometimes, but they were lit by street lamps, so it never bothered me walking this way. The other way was a shortcut through some woods, which took off about 2 miles, and the wooded bit was about a mile or so long. I often favored the wooded shortcut, and have probably walked it over 100 times. The woods were dark, however, combined with a lack of ambient light due to living in a rural area, and you had absolute abyssal darkness. Luckily, most of the time, I had my phone light to walk with, but sometimes my phone would die, or the battery would be so low. The flash wouldn't work, and I'd have to use my screen light. As you've probably guessed by now, this was one of those occasions. I remember my friends and I had just finished watching a film. It was nearing 10 p.m., so we all left my friend's house and headed our separate ways home. I contemplated briefly which way I should go and decided to take the shortcut through the woods. I started walking away from his house and towards the path that headed into the woods. The street lights dimmed, as I entered the fields before the woods. I glanced at my phone and saw my battery was really low. Only enough power left for a couple of minutes of flash, and then I'd have to use my screen for light. That wouldn't last the whole way either. As I saw the tree line approaching, I switched on the flash and followed the well-trodden path into the dark. To my dismay, my light died within seconds of entering, and I flipped my phone over to try and shine the way using the screen. As I walked, I looked out for all of the familiar landmarks I was used to seeing to ensure I was heading in the right direction. Funky tree stump, check. Half-fallen fir tree, check. Enormous puddle I had to jump over, check. Enormous puddle I had to jump over. All was going well. I was halfway through the woods when my phone completely died. I remember the moment it happened. I was engulfed in darkness. I'm not sure if you've experienced this level of darkness before, but it was so dark, I couldn't even see the outline of my hand centimeters in front of my face. Naturally, my pace slowed considerably, and I started holding my hand out in front of me to make sure I wasn't going to walk into a tree or something. I continued walking for another minute or so, until all of a sudden a pungent smell hit me. Cigarette smoke. I glanced around but couldn't see anything. Then I heard it. A cough. I wasn't alone. Thoughts raced through my head. Who would be out in the woods in the dark? Are they following me? Am I lost? I quickened my pace again, throwing a little caution to the wind. I carried on walking and tripped slightly on a branch. As I regained my balance, I heard another sound. Branches breaking underfoot. What sounded like right behind me. The snapping turned into fast footsteps that grew louder and louder. I started sprinting. I felt the well-trodden path turn to brush. I felt branches, logs, and plants hitting my legs. It wasn't long before I fell, hard. I was lying on the floor, holding my knee. I could still hear branches snapping around me and a voice muttering something. I didn't dare move. Then all of a sudden, they turned on a torch. I couldn't see anything except for the beam of light, which seemed to be eaten quickly by the darkness of the forest. I lay motionless on the ground as the beam swept through the trees. I could still hear the person mumbling, a deep growl. The crunching of footfalls grew and grew. They were only several feet from me by this point. I couldn't breathe. The light went out, the snapping of branches grew, and then nothing. Quiet. My eyes were wide open, but I couldn't see anything. Then I could hear wheezing, right above me. I wanted to cry. I wasn't sure if the person could see me or not. They could have been staring right at me, and I wouldn't know. This carried on for about 5 minutes until the crunching of leaves and snapping of twigs started up again and got fainter and fainter as they moved away from me. I remained lying down for another 5 or 10 minutes, contemplating my escape, like an idiot. I'd ran off the path and wasn't sure which way was back to it, or was home. I didn't really care. I thought I was going to walk in one direction until I left the woods and get home from there. I knew as soon as I started moving again, if the person was still in the woods, they would hear me. Should I run or try and sneak out? I opted for the latter. I slowly rose to my feet, listening constantly to my surroundings, picked a direction, and started walking. I wasn't perfectly quiet, but quiet enough to be sure I wouldn't be heard from too far away. I kept hearing snapping sounds and rustling in the distance, and every time I froze, I'd hold my breath until I was happy no one was there, and then start walking again. I repeated this pattern for what felt like an eternity until eventually I found the path. I screamed for joy in my mind and sped up my pace. After another 10 minutes, I saw it. Light. Street lights filtering in through the trees. I'd never been so happy to see a meager street lamp. But as I progressed to the end of the woods, my heart sank. At the end of the path was a black silhouette. Unmoving, contrasted against the light background, was the dark figure of a man. What should I do? Maybe it's a different person. Perhaps it's someone walking their dog. I froze and watched them silently, but they didn't move. At all. They just stood there like they were guarding the entrance to the woods. I didn't know what to do. By this point, I'd had enough. I was so close to getting out. I decided to just run straight towards the exit, straight towards them. I was a 6-foot young man. If they wanted to stop me, they'd have a hard job of it, I thought. So that's what I did. I started sprinting. The figure grew, and as I reached them, I stepped to the side. I heard someone growl, fuck loudly, and felt something clip the back of my head and tug the back of my jacket. I cleared the sheep gate in one leap and sprinted into the light. I eventually stopped running when I could see the first house and looked back. The entrance to the woods was quite far away now, and I couldn't see anyone standing by the entrance. Relaxing a bit more now, I finished my walk home. That's pretty much it. I know I could have overreacted. It could have been someone out for a walk in the woods, a dog walker or camper. But what I thought was strange was that they didn't use their torch except briefly on one occasion. Once they heard me, they also actively seeked me out. Who knows what would have happened if they caught me? In any case, I never walked that way home alone again. Not at night anyway. Back in the late 2000s, when I was in my early to mid-teens, my friends and I had a regular hangout spot, an old, abandoned school. It was a small, forgotten building with only 8 classrooms, a teacher's room, a cafeteria, and 2 bathrooms. There was also one room that remained a mystery to us, as it was always locked. Let me take you back to those days and recount the strange events that unfolded. This school had fallen into disrepair and was left behind during the town's modernization in the 80s. By the time we discovered it, it had become a popular spot for drug addicts, and used needles were a common sight. Whenever we visited, our first task was to ensure that the building was empty and safe, as much as it could be in those circumstances. One fateful day, my friend and I were the first to get out of school. We excitedly made our way to the abandoned building, unaware of the peculiar encounter that awaited us. As we entered the hallway, there he was, a large, imposing man. His presence startled my friend, and she let out a piercing scream. The man, seemingly unfazed, turned to face us and asked, "Have you guys seen insert my friend's name here?" We explained that we had just arrived and hadn't seen anyone. He sighed, shrugged, and without further ado, he pushed past us, leaving through the same entrance we had just used. The encounter left us perplexed. Our friend had an uncommon name, and it was unlikely that this man was searching for someone else with the same name. We later described the man to our friend, but he had no idea who it could have been. The mystery lingered, and fear kept us away from the abandoned school for months. Finally, after 3 to 4 long months, during the summer vacation, we mustered the courage to return. Our plan for the day was to climb onto the roof and enjoy the warm sun. As we ascended, we discovered that the roof was weak and on the verge of collapse. However, something drew us toward a specific area, a hole in the roof. It was positioned directly above the room we had never been able to access. Curiosity got the better of us, and we decided to take a risk. One of my friends had the brilliant idea of lowering her arm through the hole, using her phone to record the room below. Little did we know that this decision would lead us into a horrifying situation. As her arm descended into the darkness, capturing the room on video, a blood-curdling scream escaped her lips. She hastily pulled her arm back, but her phone was gone. Something had knocked it from her hand. Peering through the hole, we could see her phone lying on the floor below. We quickly descended from the roof and mustered all our courage to gain access to the mysterious room. After relentless efforts, we managed to create a hole in the door. As we reached inside, we found that the door now opened easily from the inside. Stepping into the room, we were greeted by an eerie sight that still haunts me to this day. The room was roughly 4 by 4 meters with solid concrete floors and walls. In the corner to our left were two metal bowls sitting on the floor. At the back of the room, we noticed 5 chains hanging from the wall, 4 with equally sized cuffs, and 1 larger chain that resembled a neck restraint. The implications were chilling, and without wasting a moment, we retrieved my friend's phone and hastily left the room, overwhelmed by a sense of dread. The room left us both terrified and strangely fascinated. After much deliberation that same night, we decided to return to the abandoned school the following day for another look at the mysterious room. Our curiosity had gotten the better of us, and we couldn't resist the allure of uncovering its secrets. However, when we arrived, we were met with disappointment and a renewed sense of unease. The door was locked once again, and someone had covered the hole we had made with a large, nailed wooden board. Realizing that we might never have the chance to explore that room again, we made the difficult decision to leave it in the past. Over time, our fear subsided, but the memory of that room and its dark purpose remained etched in our minds. As the years went by, my fascination with abandoned places grew, leading me to become an experienced member of the urban exploration, Urbex, community. I encountered many eerie and sinister locations, each with its own chilling stories. However, in the depths of my heart, I always longed to revisit that old abandoned school, to see if the room still existed, and perhaps find answers to the questions that plagued me. Unfortunately, fate had different plans. The old school was eventually demolished, making way for a thrift store. The place that held so much mystery and history was now nothing more than a memory. The opportunity to confront the past and unlock the secrets of that unsettling room had slipped away forever. Yet that fateful encounter and subsequent exploration of the abandoned school left an indelible mark on my life. It ignited my passion for urban exploration and sparked a desire to uncover the hidden stories behind forgotten places. While the truth of that room may forever remain a mystery, the experience shaped who I am today, a seeker of forgotten tales, drawn to the eerie beauty of abandoned spaces. And so my journey continues as I venture into the darkness, seeking new enigmas and unraveling the secrets of forgotten places, hoping that one day I may stumble upon another mystery that rivals the haunting allure of that long-lost room in the abandoned school.